Welcome to Mystara, as we are looking for the good and the bad this week with your topic of choice, good aligned humanoids. This wasn't an easy one, because Mystara's humanoids have mostly a shared origin, with the exception of gnolls and thuls. They're all from the same stock, and even those two were derived from that same stock through different means. There's been a hue and cry about humanoids lately, but those are only coming from the Forgotten Realms. In Mystara, the orcs, ogres, hobgoblins, and the rest are proud of their origin, and look forward to the conquest of the whole world. But it's time to look at the ones that buck their alignment and work for the forces of good, or neutrality mainly. If I did this on the good ones, this video would be about a minute long. I'm Mr. Welch, and today we are looking at the good of the bad. The origins of humanoids in Mystara goes back to the afterlife video I created a while back, where unlike other settings, Mystara's afterlife is tied to reincarnation. New souls are created, but those that don't achieve immortality or get elevated to higher status by their patron Immortal are returned back to mortal life after a time in the afterworld. This is how humanoids were created, sometime before the rise of Blackmoor. The immortal Idris created the first beastmen when she assaulted the land of Evergrun to demand immortality for her and her followers. Long story short, her followers were slain and she ascended to immortality. Her patron Hel reshaped the followers of Idris, as well as some of the most evil souls in other races, into the newly formed beastman race. Every humanoid was literally crafted from an evil soul and returned to the world with the goal to conquer it. Idris didn't stop there and crafted new versions of beastmen to further her goals. That means the beastmen are the precursors to the modern humanoids. These are the various races that were evolved from the baseline beastmen. The current forms are the most stable of the humanoids, though all of them can still interbreed, though their offspring may not be viable. The beastmen were created through a separate species from humans and demi-humans, so they can't interbreed, thus no half-orcs at all unless there's some sort of immortal magic involved. The orcs, kobolds, and goblins aren't interested in interspecies romance anyways. As a whole, they're driven by their evil nature and their promise of conquest from their creation. So when you're playing Keep on the Borderland and you get to the famous kobold caves with all the little young kobolds, remember that when you decide what to do with them, or else when the paladin turns his back on the kobold babies, he's going to get shanked to death with about 24 sharpened baby rattles. But there are a few humanoids that have given up their evil ways, usually because circumstances demanded it or a massive change in their culture caused social upheaval. But those are unique circumstances, and it almost always affects an entire group of humanoids rather than just a single gnoll or hobgoblin. While Mystara is based on the law-chaos scale rather than good or evil, the vast majority of humanoids are still evil. A good humanoid isn't the exception to the rule, it's a statistical aberration. You will find neutral humanoids far more than you will find a single good aligned humanoid. The location that has the largest number of non-evil humanoids in Mystara is found in the known world. There's two areas largely populated by humanoids, the beastmen of the waste and the Krugel orcs. The orcs are just as savage and warlike as their above-ground ancestors. However, the beastmen were pure strain, saved from the great rain of fire by Ka and the other various immortals. The biggest impact on their lives, aside from being moved to the Hollow World, was that they were cut off from Hel and her machinations for them. They were isolated away from the other cultures and learned to survive on their own. With no one to raid, they were left to their own devices to maintain their culture. Because of the difficulty obtaining magic in the Hollow World, their religious fervor gradually faded, and when there's no clerics to receive spells, there's less emphasis on following the Immortal's instructions. Because of their isolation, beastmen have lost their urge to conquer and enslave. They're still a brutal people. They value physical strength over anything else, but they aren't automatically hostile. While quite a few beastmen are still very evil, there are tribes that have settled down and will actually barter with other races for goods. A few benevolent beastmen in the tribes would be considered an oddity, but not automatically shunned by his tribe, unless his tribe was one of the more evil ones, of course. Good aligned adventurers are known to come from the beastmen wastes. Even the lighthouse has a few among their number. For those, the biggest problem is not escaping the lingering influences of Hel, but instead of resisting the spell of preservation, it tries to keep them from thinking for themselves. Once they have shaken off the effects of their enchantment, they're free to think as they will. As members of the Lighthouse themselves, they're rare in the Hollow World, while good-aligned beastmen are going to be in the single digits at best. The one named good-aligned beastman from the Lighthouse is from the Etruscan Revised book, with Wally, the loadmaster of the surface expedition. He's shy and devoted to his work, but he is generally curious and wants to help. The next batch of at least neutral humanoids are the Orcs of Alfheim. There's a continuity issue with the orcs invading Alfheim, as it either happened hundreds of years ago, or 10 years ago, depending on the source. And both sources come from the same book. The Alfheim book talks about how the orcs there are the descendants of the original 67 orcs that elected to remain after an invasion, so that implies generations have passed. But then in the Urgum the Quiet entry, it says that he was part of the invasion 10 years ago. But if it doesn't have a continuity problem, it wouldn't be a Mystara book, would it? Regardless, going with the first scenario of centuries ago, the orcs invaded and got trounced. The elves used the prisoners of war as slave labor for a while, but slavery doesn't fit in well with the elven philosophy, and as such they let the orcs go after a few years. But 67 orcs asked to remain and assimilate into elven society. The elves obliged, and the orcs adapted into their new lifestyle. After all these years, there is a small but noticeable population of orcs living in Alfheim town. They are known for keeping to themselves, but there hasn't been any problem with them, to the point of elves are quick to defend the orcs as their orcs. Why they changed their overall alignment is questionable, but the original ones that stayed might have been the few neutral and good orcs from the prisoners of the initial invasion. The largest population of non-evil humanoids on the surface, well, kind of, comes from the rather unusual nation of Gracalia in the Serpent Peninsula, where gnolls and elves live together in less than perfect harmony. The two races are almost symbiotic in their nation. The elves have magic and can grow the food needed to keep from starving, and the gnolls have the numbers and manpower to do the labor necessary to keep the nation alive. Because of the harsh environment that threatens both species, both have become more pragmatic in their nature. The races need each other. Exterminating what once was their mortal enemy dooms everybody. Because of this, the gnolls are largely neutral in alignment. They don't have any love for the elves, but they do have some mutual respect. In this case, the harsh reality of their situation was more important than the dictates from their immortal, causing the slow shift in alignment. The largest possible origin for good or neutral humanoids is of course the Broken Lands, but they had better learn how to play along with the barbaric cultures there, or just get out quickly. Nice orcs aren't long for the world in Thar's legions. Even in the lost city of Oinkmar, the only good creature found there is secretly Angus McClintock, a human wizard who just happens to be the ugliest man alive. And reading that section, I find another continuity error, with the Nightwing trapped there drawing energy from the Sphere of Entropy, despite repeated statements from other sources that the spheres are schools of philosophical thought, not physical places. I would hate to be on the plane of Socratic method where every question is answered with another question. Should do a video fixing all the continuity errors in Mystara, but I don't think anybody's going to sit around for 36 hours while I go over them. But back to the orcs. To sum up, humanoids were created by immortals reincarnating the evilest souls they had into new forms to destroy the old ways and recreate them in their own vision. Humanoids generally only change alignment when isolated away from their people, and even then, neutral is about as far in alignment as they're going to get. Good aligned humanoids are going to be especially rare, and are going to face as much prejudice from their own people as they would from humans and demi-humans. Well, that wraps up another thrilling video, meaning I need a new topic. You guys have voted for the last topic 4 of the last 6 times, but still keep voting for the other 4. So one day, the current 4 will have their day. But joining the list of national leaders, a military breakdown of the nations, the Ethengar-Windar War, and how Darrican is changing the world through economic reforms is the city-states of the Savage Coast. So choose wisely. But remember, until next week, evil will always win because good is dumb.